The courtroom was a daunting place, with its cold gray walls and rows of wooden benches that echoed the anxious whispers of those waiting for their names to be called. I stood there, heart pounding in my chest, gripping my daughter Melanie's small hand tightly. At just 6 years old, she had an innocence about her that made the gravity of our situation all the more heartbreaking. "Mommy, are we going to be okay?" Melanie's voice was barely above a whisper, her big brown eyes searching mine for reassurance. I knelt down, brushing a stray curl behind her ear. "Of course, sweetheart. We just need to tell the judge what happened." She nodded but didn't look convinced. I could see the worry etched on her face, mirroring my own anxiety. Today was about a $200 parking fine, an amount that felt insurmountable when I could barely make rent each month. As I waited for our case to be called, my mind raced through the events that led us here. The parking ticket had been the result of a rushed decision. With Melanie sick and needing medicine, I had pulled into a spot that was clearly marked, telling myself it would only be for a moment. But those moments have a way of snowballing, don't they? A moment turned into a fine, and that fine felt like a weight pressing down on me, threatening to crush everything I was trying to build for my daughter. "Mommy, what's a fine?" Melanie asked, her voice breaking my thoughts. I hesitated, searching for a way to explain. "It's like when you break a rule and someone tells you that you have to pay for it. But sometimes it's just really hard to pay those things." "Like when I don't clean my room?" she asked, tilting her head, the corner of her mouth curling into a small smile. "Exactly," I replied, forcing a smile back. "But this is a little different. It's more serious because it's money we don't have." Just then, the bailiff called my name, Amanda Smith. My heart dropped into my stomach. I stood up, feeling like all eyes were on me as I walked to the front of the room, Melanie trailing closely behind. Judge Oliver sat at the front, his stern expression framed by a pair of wire-rimmed glasses that rested low on his nose. He looked over the paperwork before him, his brow furrowing as if he was studying a particularly difficult puzzle. "Miss Smith, you are here today regarding a parking violation," he asked, his voice deep and authoritative. "Yes, Your Honor," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "Please tell me your side of the story," he interrupted, glancing at me with a hint of impatience. Taking a deep breath, I began. "I parked in a reserved space because my daughter was sick. I thought it would only take a few minutes to grab her medication." "I see," he cut in again, "but rules are rules, and you must understand that." I felt my throat tighten, the words I had prepared melting away. "I do understand, Your Honor, but I'm a single mother. I work 2 jobs to make ends meet. That $200 fine is just." Melanie tugged at my hand, breaking through the tension. "Mommy, I'm hungry." A ripple of surprise ran through the courtroom, and I could feel my face flush with embarrassment. I shot her a quick glance, hoping to convey that this was not the time for her to speak up. "Mommy will get you something to eat soon," I whispered hurriedly, but Melanie looked up at Judge Oliver, her innocent expression unwavering. The judge raised an eyebrow, taken aback by the interruption. "And how long has it been since you've eaten, young lady?" Melanie looked at him with wide eyes, completely unfazed by the formality of the courtroom. "I don't know, I just want a peanut butter sandwich." A small chuckle escaped the crowd, breaking the heavy silence. I couldn't believe it. The tension in the room had suddenly shifted. Judge Oliver's lips twitched at the corners as he regarded my daughter, a glimmer of humanity breaking through his usually rigid demeanor. "Well, it sounds like we need to get you fed, then, don't we?" he said, surprising me with a gentle tone I hadn't expected. "Can we have cookies, too?" Melanie added, her innocence cutting through the somber atmosphere like a ray of sunshine. "Only if your mother says yes," Judge Oliver replied, his eyes twinkling as he returned his gaze to me. I couldn't help but laugh, even though I was on the verge of tears. Let's just focus on the sandwich for now. Okay, Mel. The judge nodded, his expression softening further. As he scribbled something on a notepad, I felt a small flicker of hope ignite within me. Perhaps there was room for understanding, even in a place that felt so cold and unforgiving. As the courtroom settled into an awkward silence, I could feel the weight of the stares directed at me. My palms were clammy, and I shifted nervously from one foot to the other, still holding onto Melanie's hand. She tugged on my sleeve, her small frame barely reaching my waist, and I could feel her warmth against my leg. "Mommy, why is everyone looking at us?" she whispered, glancing around the room with curiosity. I knelt down to her level, trying to convey calmness despite my racing heart. They're just waiting to hear what the judge has to say. It's like when we wait for our turn at the playground. Okay, she replied, still unsure but willing to trust me. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus on her rather than the judging eyes of the gallery. Suddenly, the judge's gavel struck the sound block, a sharp crack that pierced the tension. "Next case," he announced, and I felt my stomach drop as he looked directly at us. "Miss Smith, you're up," he said, his tone shifting slightly from authoritative to something more compassionate. "Yes, Your Honor," I managed to say, stepping forward, and Melanie followed closely, her tiny hand slipping out of mine as she wandered toward the edge of the podium. "Mommy, I'm really hungry," Melanie said again, louder this time, her voice echoing slightly in the stillness. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. "Melanie, sweetie, please," I whispered urgently, bending down to her. "We'll get food after this, I promise." "But I don't want to wait," she replied, crossing her arms defiantly, her youthful stubbornness shining through. The judge's expression softened further. "Young lady, is that why you're acting out? You just want a snack?" Melanie nodded vigorously, her ponytail bouncing with enthusiasm. "Uh-huh, and peanut butter sandwiches." The courtroom erupted into soft laughter, and for a moment, the tension that had been suffocating me lifted. Judge Oliver chuckled lightly, and I caught myself smiling despite the anxiety knotting my stomach. "Okay, how about this?" he said, leaning forward with interest. "If you promise to be quiet for just a few more minutes, I'll see what I can do about a sandwich after we're done here." Melanie's eyes widened, and she clasped her hands together in delight. "Really?" I watched as my daughter's innocence radiated hope, completely oblivious to the serious nature of our predicament. "Yes, really," the judge replied, his voice carrying a playful undertone. "But only if you help me out. Can you be my assistant and help me understand what I should do about your mommy's parking fine?" I couldn't believe my ears. Was he really engaging her in this way? "Sure," Melanie exclaimed, her face lighting up with enthusiasm. "Mommy is the best. She makes the best cakes and works super hard." The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Cakes? What kind of cakes does your mommy make?" "Chocolate, with sprinkles. And sometimes she makes cupcakes too," Melanie exclaimed, bouncing on her toes. "She always says it's for my birthday, but she makes them all the time." I felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. "Well, it's true. I bake for extra money," I interjected, trying to steer the conversation back to the matter at hand. But it's not always easy to balance everything. Judge Oliver looked thoughtful, his brow furrowing as he examined my face, as if he was considering the weight of my words. "It sounds like you're a very dedicated mother, Miss Smith." "I'm sure it's tough sometimes." "Thank you, Your Honor," I replied, grateful for his acknowledgement. Just then, Melanie piped up again, her innocent curiosity shining through. "If you let my mommy go, can we bring you a cupcake too?" The courtroom erupted in laughter again, and I could hardly contain my own chuckles. "Melanie, that's not how it works," I said, shaking my head, but the warmth of her spirit brought lightness to my heart. The judge's eyes sparkled with amusement as he replied, "Well, I appreciate the offer, but I think I'll pass on the cupcakes for now. How about we focus on your mother and her parking ticket?" Melanie nodded, her expression serious now. "Okay, Mommy just needs to be able to take care of me." "Yes, and I'm trying to do that," I added softly, the sincerity of my situation coming to the forefront. Judge Oliver regarded both of us for a moment, and in that instant, I sensed a shift within him. Perhaps my daughter's innocent words had pierced through his usual sternness, revealing a glimmer of compassion that felt rare in a place like this. "All right, then," he said, straightening in his seat. "Let's see what we can do about that, shall we?" The weight of the fine still loomed overhead, but for the first time that day, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this would turn out all right after all. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted as Judge Oliver regarded Melanie with a mixture of curiosity and warmth. I watched, my heart racing, as he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the polished surface of the bench. His eyes, usually sharp and unyielding, softened in the glow of a newfound interest. "All right, Melanie," the judge began, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Since you've been so helpful, I'd like to ask you a question. What do you think should happen to your mommy because she broke a parking rule?" I held my breath, fear and hope colliding in my chest. Would she understand the gravity of the situation? Melanie thought for a moment, her brow furrowing as she considered her answer. Maybe she could just say she's sorry, and then you can give her a cookie." Laughter bubbled through the courtroom again, the tension easing as the judge chuckled heartily. "A cookie, you say? That's an interesting punishment. But don't you think she should have to do something else since it's a rule?" Melanie's eyes widened, her little mind processing the question as she glanced at me. "Mommy, what do you think?" I could feel my cheeks flush. "Sweetie, the judge is the one who gets to decide these things. You don't have to worry about me." "Okay," she replied brightly, turning back to the judge. "But if she has to do something, can she have a cookie first?" Judge Oliver's laughter rang out again, a genuine sound that filled the room with warmth. "You certainly have a way of making things light-hearted, young lady. I must say, it's refreshing." Melanie beamed, her innocence melting away any lingering apprehension. "Mommy always says that if you want something, you have to be really nice and ask nicely." "Your mother sounds like a wise woman," he replied, his eyes twinkling. "Tell me, Melanie, what else does your mommy do?" "I've heard about the cakes, but what makes them so special?" "Oh, they're super tasty. She puts all kinds of sprinkles on them, and they're so sweet they make my teeth hurt." Melanie exclaimed, her hands waving animatedly as she spoke. "Is that so?" The judge said, feigning surprise. "Do you think if I tasted one, it would be sweet enough to keep me smiling during my long days here?" "Definitely," Melanie declared with all the certainty in the world. "You should come to my birthday party. We can have cake and ice cream." A murmur of amusement rippled through the audience, and I couldn't help but chuckle along with them. Judge Oliver, visibly warmed by Melanie's enthusiasm, glanced over at me. "I'll have to check my schedule, but I appreciate the invitation." "See, Mommy? Even the judge wants cake." Melanie grinned, her innocence radiating joy in the somber environment. "Yes, he certainly does," I said, my heart swelling with pride for my daughter. I had never seen a judge engage with anyone like this before, and it made me feel lighter, as if perhaps we weren't just another case on the docket. Judge Oliver leaned back in his chair, contemplating for a moment. "Now, Melanie, do you think your mommy should be punished severely for making a mistake? Or do you think a lighter touch would be more appropriate? Melanie tilted her head, a serious expression crossing her face. If she had to park somewhere else, she wouldn't have gotten in trouble. But she was trying to help me. So she should say she's sorry, and we can get ice cream instead of a punishment. I looked at her, surprised and touched by her empathy. Sweetheart, I appreciate you standing up for me, but it's the judge's decision, I said softly. Judge Oliver's gaze softened even further, and I could see a flicker of respect in his eyes. You know, Melanie, it's very kind of you to think about your mother's situation like that. It shows a lot of love. I believe that when it comes to justice, understanding is just as important as the rules. Yes, Melanie exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. And love is the best part. The judge nodded, his demeanor visibly changing. You're absolutely right. Love and compassion are essential, especially in a courtroom where people often feel scared or lost. Do you love cookies too? Melanie asked, her big eyes sparkling with curiosity. Judge Oliver chuckled, leaning back in his chair. I do, as a matter of fact. Cookies and cakes are among my favorite treats. Then you should definitely try my mommy's cakes. Melanie suggested earnestly, her small hand reaching toward the judge as if to emphasize her point. I promise they're the best. Melanie, I interrupted gently. We should focus on why we're here. But inside, I was grateful for her ability to break the ice and bring a sense of humanity into a tense situation. Judge Oliver nodded, but his smile remained. Let's see where this conversation takes us. Ms. Smith, your daughter's insights might just lead us to a more compassionate outcome today. As I listened to the banter between them, I felt a warm wave of relief wash over me. For the first time since entering the courtroom, I felt like we might leave with more than just a fine. Perhaps we'd leave with understanding. A connection formed through the pure innocence of a child. The laughter from Melanie's innocent remarks hung in the air, and for a fleeting moment, the courtroom felt less intimidating. I glanced at Judge Oliver, who was still chuckling, his stern facade momentarily forgotten. I couldn't help but think how unusual it was for a judge to engage so deeply with a child, and even more surprising, how refreshing it felt. All right, Melanie, Judge Oliver said, his tone returning to that of authority, but still laced with warmth. Let's talk about why your mommy is here today. Can you tell me why she got the parking ticket? Melanie thought for a moment, her little brows furrowing in concentration. Well, she had to park to get me medicine, she explained. I was coughing and needed it right away, and we couldn't find a spot. That's right, Your Honor, I interjected, feeling the need to clarify. I was trying to help her. I didn't think it would take long, but... Judge Oliver raised a hand, cutting me off gently. Let Melanie speak. She seems to have a handle on this. Okay, I replied, a little taken aback, but willing to let her continue. I didn't want to be sick, and Mommy worked hard to get the money for my medicine. She just wanted to help me feel better. Melanie continued, her voice firm. It's not fair to give her a big punishment because she was being a good mommy. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling in. I felt a pang of emotion at how my daughter perceived my actions, understanding my struggles even at such a young age. Judge Oliver nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. You're quite insightful, Melanie. Your perspective is very important. Sometimes rules can seem strict, but we have to remember the reasons behind our actions. I just want my mommy to be happy, Melanie said, her voice softening. If she gets punished, then I'll be sad too. The judge looked at me then, and I could see the conflict in his expression. You're right, young lady. It's essential to consider how our decisions affect those we love. He leaned back in his chair, contemplating. Miss Smith, how have you managed to keep your daughter happy despite your struggles? I hesitated, feeling the lump in my throat grow larger. I do my best, Your Honor. I work 2 jobs, and even when it's tough, I try to make time for Melanie. We bake together on the weekends, and I always remind her how much I love her. That sounds lovely, the judge replied, a genuine smile crossing his face. And I imagine it brings joy to both of you, even in hard times. Yes, it does, I said, my heart swelling with pride. I want her to know that even though things are difficult, we can still find joy in the little moments. Melanie nodded vigorously, like when we made that giant cake for my birthday. It was so big, Mommy, and we had ice cream too. Indeed, Judge Oliver said, chuckling again. I bet that was a sweet day. It seems you're both resourceful and loving, even when life throws challenges your way. Just like a superhero. Melanie chimed in, puffing her chest out proudly. Mommy is my superhero because she always saves the day. I couldn't help but laugh, feeling a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. I wouldn't say I'm a superhero, but I do try my best for her. You're right, Miss Smith, Judge Oliver said, his tone serious once more. Superheroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they just work hard and love fiercely. Your daughter's wisdom reminds us that compassion is just as crucial as following the rules. Melanie beamed at the praise, and I felt a surge of warmth. Thank you, Your Honor, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I really appreciate your understanding. I never expected to be here today, and it's been overwhelming. Judge Oliver held my gaze, his demeanor thoughtful. Life can be unpredictable, and it often tests us in ways we don't foresee. But I think it's vital to listen to the voices of those who are affected by our decisions, especially when those voices belong to children. He turned back to Melanie, a gentle smile on his lips. So, young lady, what do you think would be a fair way to resolve this issue? Should your mother face a punishment, or do you think something else would be more appropriate? Melanie's eyes widened in surprise, her small frame leaning forward. Maybe, instead of a punishment, you could give her some help. Like some money or something, so she can keep being a good mommy. I felt a rush of anxiety at her suggestion. Melanie, sweetie, we can't ask for that. The judge has to decide on the rules. Judge Oliver chuckled softly, but his eyes were serious. It's an interesting proposal, Melanie. You're suggesting that instead of punishing your mother, we offer her support to help her on her journey. That's quite wise for someone your age. Melanie smiled, clearly pleased with the judge's reaction. That's what superheroes do. They help people. The room seemed to still again, the weight of her innocence and sincerity hanging in the air. I could see Judge Oliver processing her words, his expression shifting from one of authority to something softer, more compassionate. All right then, he said finally, taking a deep breath. I will consider what you've suggested, Melanie. I believe your mother deserves a chance to continue being the wonderful superhero she is. My heart raced as I held Melanie's hand tighter, hope blooming within me. Maybe this wouldn't end in disaster after all. The atmosphere in the courtroom felt lighter, filled with a kind of warmth I hadn't expected when I first stepped through those doors. In that moment, I realized that sometimes a child's wisdom could pave the way for understanding and compassion, reshaping the very definition of justice. The tension in the courtroom began to dissipate as Judge Oliver paused to consider Melanie's heartfelt proposal. I held my breath, clinging to the hope that perhaps we could leave with more than just a lesson learned. The judge's eyes flicked back and forth between Melanie and me, and for the first time that day, I saw a glimmer of something akin to compassion cross his stern demeanor. After a moment that felt like an eternity, Judge Oliver broke the silence. All right, let's take a short recess while I think about this. He stood up, signaling to the bailiff, who promptly made his way to the door. Melanie turned to me, her expression a mix of excitement and confusion. Mommy, did I say something wrong? I knelt down beside her, brushing a stray hair from her face. No, sweetheart, you did perfectly. You made the judge laugh and think. That's really special. I just want you to be happy, she said, her innocent eyes shining. I know, and I'm so proud of you for speaking up. I squeezed her hand, feeling a warmth swell in my chest. You have a gift for making people see the good in things. As the judge exited the courtroom, the atmosphere shifted. For a brief moment, we were left alone, and Melanie began to fidget in her seat, the weight of the day catching up to her. Mommy, I'm really hungry, she whispered, her stomach rumbling as if on cue. Me too, baby, I admitted, glancing at the clock. I wasn't expecting to be here this long. Do you think we can survive until we get out of here? Melanie nodded, her determination unwavering. I can wait, but I wish I had a cookie. Just then, the bailiff returned, a small brown paper bag in his hands. Your Honor asked me to bring this to you, he said, handing the bag to Melanie. She opened it eagerly, her eyes widening as she pulled out a sandwich and a juice box. Oh, wow, she exclaimed, holding the items up as if they were treasures. Look, Mommy, he brought me food. I was taken aback, surprised by the judge's unexpected kindness. Thank you, I said to the bailiff, who simply nodded with a smile. Eat up, kiddo, he encouraged Melanie, and I could see the delight on her face as she took a bite of the sandwich. Yum, she said, her eyes lighting up. This is the best sandwich ever. I watched as Melanie savored her food, her worries momentarily forgotten. My heart swelled with gratitude, not just for the sandwich, but for the warmth and humanity that was beginning to fill this cold, sterile place. Your mother is working very hard for you, isn't she? The bailiff asked, glancing at me with a kind expression. Yes, she is, Melanie replied proudly, her mouth full of food. She makes the best cakes and cookies, and she always helps me when I'm sick. That's wonderful to hear, the bailiff said, looking at me. You're doing a great job. Just remember, sometimes it takes a little kindness to change someone's day. Thank you, I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. I really appreciate that. Melanie took another big bite of her sandwich, her small cheeks puffed out. And when I grow up, I want to be just like Mommy. Oh, sweetheart, I said, my heart swelling at her words. You can be anything you want to be. Just remember to keep that big heart of yours. Judge Oliver re-entered the courtroom, his presence commanding as he took his seat. The bailiff gave a quick nod and stepped back, his brief moment of kindness lingering in the air like the scent of fresh-baked bread. Thank you for your patience, everyone, Judge Oliver said, his tone more relaxed than before. I've given your situation some thought, Ms. Smith. I felt the room tense again, but this time there was a hint of optimism in the air. He continued, I believe that justice isn't solely about punishment. It's also about understanding and supporting those in our community who need it most. He glanced at Melanie, who was still munching on her sandwich. This young lady's perspective has given me a lot to consider. My heart raced as he continued, given your circumstances and the fact that this is your first offense, I am going to dismiss your parking fine. The courtroom erupted in whispers, and I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Really? I breathed, a wave of relief crashing over me. Really, he affirmed, a small smile creeping onto his face. But I also want to make sure you have the resources you need to continue taking care of your daughter. I have a list of programs for single mothers that can provide support, including career training and childcare services. Tears of gratitude filled my eyes. Thank you, Your Honor. This means so much to us. Melanie grinned from ear to ear, sandwich forgotten as she jumped up and down in her seat. You're the best judge ever. Judge Oliver chuckled. His earlier sternness melted away. Thank you, Melanie. I'll take that compliment any day. As I looked around the courtroom, I could see that the atmosphere had transformed. What had once felt like an intimidating, cold space now brimmed with compassion and understanding, thanks to the innocent wisdom of a 6-year-old. In that moment, I realized that sometimes it takes a small act of kindness, a sandwich, a genuine conversation, to bridge the gap between judgment and empathy. Today, my daughter had reminded us all that love, understanding, and community could be the most powerful forces in our lives. As the applause from the courtroom settled into an expectant silence, I felt a rush of emotions swirl inside me. The words dismissed echoed in my mind, but I wasn't sure I could believe it. I glanced at Melanie, who was still glowing with pride, her little fingers clutching the remnants of her sandwich like it was a trophy. Did he really just say that? I whispered to her, unable to contain my disbelief. Yes, he did, she exclaimed, her eyes wide. You're free, Mommy, no fine. The judge sat at the bench, his expression thoughtful as he watched the interaction between mother and daughter. He took a moment to gather his papers, a contemplative look on his face. Finally, he turned to us, his tone shifting to one of authority. Miss Smith, he began, addressing me directly. I understand that financial hardships can make even the simplest of tasks, like parking, feel insurmountable. It's clear you've been doing your best to provide for Melanie, and I want to commend you for your hard work and dedication. I nodded, my heart racing as I listened intently. Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to give her a good life. Judge Oliver leaned forward slightly, a glimmer of warmth in his eyes. It's evident that you cared deeply for your daughter. That's why, instead of imposing a fine, I'm offering you support. This dismissal is not just an end to this particular case. It's a chance for a new beginning. Melanie, catching on to the significance of his words, chimed in, like a superhero starting a new adventure. I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. Yes, just like that, I agreed, feeling a spark of hope ignite within me. Exactly, Judge Oliver replied, a soft chuckle escaping his lips. Now I'll be providing you with resources that can help alleviate some of the burdens you're facing. I want to ensure you have access to local programs that can offer childcare, job training, and even financial advice. My breath caught in my throat, the weight of his offer crashing over me like a wave. That's incredibly generous of you, Your Honor. I don't even know how to express my gratitude. You don't have to, he said, his tone sincere. Just take the opportunity to build a better future for both you and Melanie. It's what every parent deserves. Melanie, her eyes sparkling, exclaimed, "We'll make you proud, Judge. I promise." Judge Oliver smiled, and I could see the genuine warmth in his demeanor. I have no doubt about that. But remember, it's going to take hard work and determination. Are you both ready for the challenge? I squeezed Melanie's hand tightly, feeling a rush of courage surge through me. We are, Your Honor. We're ready to work hard. The judge nodded, his expression softening. Good. It's important to remember that seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It's a strength. You're not alone in this, and there are people out there who want to see you succeed. As he spoke, I could feel the walls I had built around my heart begin to crumble. The fear and anxiety that had weighed me down for so long started to lift, replaced by a burgeoning sense of hope. Before we finish today, I want to ask you both one more question, Judge Oliver said, his gaze shifting to Melanie. What do you think is the most important thing about being a family? Melanie thought for a moment, her brows furrowing in concentration. "That we help each other and love each other," she finally declared, her voice ringing with certainty. "Like superheroes." "Exactly," Judge Oliver affirmed, his eyes twinkling. "Love and support are what make families strong." I felt a tear escape down my cheek, and I quickly wiped it away, not wanting to embarrass my daughter. "You're right, Your Honor. Love is what keeps us going." Judge Oliver then gathered his papers and prepared to adjourn. "In that case, I wish you both the very best on your journey. I expect to hear great things from you, Miss Smith." "Thank you, Your Honor," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "You've given us a chance we didn't think we had. We won't waste it." With that, he nodded, signaling the end of our session. "Court is adjourned." As we stood up, Melanie bounced on her feet, excitement bubbling within her. "Mommy, we did it. We're free." "Yes, we are," I said, enveloping her in a tight hug. "And we're going to make the most of this." As we made our way out of the courtroom, I glanced back at Judge Oliver, who was watching us with an approving smile. In that moment, I realized how powerful a single act of kindness could be, how it had transformed our day, and opened doors I hadn't dared to hope existed. Stepping outside into the bright sunlight, I felt lighter, more hopeful than I had in years. "How about we get some ice cream to celebrate?" I asked Melanie, who squealed in delight. "Yay, ice cream," she shouted, pulling me towards the exit. As we walked hand in hand, I felt the warmth of the sun on my face, a symbol of the brighter days ahead. Together, we would take on whatever challenges life threw our way, fueled by love, resilience, and a little bit of kindness from a judge who believed in second chances. The days following our court appearance felt surreal. I couldn't shake the feeling of hope that had taken root in my heart. With the judge's support echoing in my mind, I began to explore the resources he had provided. Each morning, I would wake up to Melanie's bright smile, a reminder of why I fought so hard to create a better life for us both. One sunny afternoon, after picking Melanie up from school, I decided to take her to the local community center where one of the programs Judge Oliver had mentioned was held. As we approached the entrance, I felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. "Mommy, is this where we get to meet other superheroes?" Melanie asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Yes, sweetheart. And maybe we'll find some super friends too," I replied, trying to mask my own trepidation with enthusiasm. As we entered, I was greeted by the warm smiles of the staff and the vibrant energy of families gathered for various activities. A woman named Linda approached us, her demeanor friendly and welcoming. "Hello, you must be Amanda and Melanie. Judge Oliver told us about you." "Really?" I exclaimed, surprised by his mention of us. "Yes, he spoke highly of your determination and how you're looking for resources to help you. We're so glad you came. Let me show you around," Linda said, leading us deeper into the center. As we toured the facility, I felt a sense of belonging wash over me. There were classes for job training, workshops on budgeting, and even support groups for single parents. I could hardly believe how many resources were available to help families like ours. "Mommy, look. They have art classes." Melanie pointed excitedly at a colorful room where children were painting. "Maybe we can sign you up for that," I suggested, my heart swelling with pride at her enthusiasm. After the tour, we sat down with Linda to discuss our options. "So, Amanda, what specific challenges are you hoping to address?" she asked, her pen poised over a notepad. I hesitated for a moment, gathering my thoughts. "Well, right now, my biggest challenge is finding stable employment that allows me to support Melanie and still be there for her after school. I want to ensure she has everything she needs, but I feel overwhelmed." Linda nodded empathetically. "That's completely understandable. Many parents feel the same way. The good news is, we have job training programs that can help you build skills and connect with potential employers. As we spoke, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. And what about childcare? I need to know that Melanie will be taken care of while I work or attend classes. We have resources for subsidized childcare, Linda assured me. And our community partners can help with finding safe and affordable options. Really? I breathed, almost in disbelief. That would change everything for us. Just then, Melanie tugged at my sleeve, her eyes wide with wonder. "Mommy, can I paint? Can I be a superhero painter?" I laughed, appreciating her unwavering optimism. "Of course. We'll definitely find a way for you to paint." Linda smiled warmly at Melanie. "You can be anything you want, sweetie. We believe in supporting everyone's dreams here." As we left the community center, I felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from my shoulders. Melanie skipped beside me, her laughter infectious. "Mommy, this place is like magic," she said, her eyes shining. "You're going to be the best superhero ever." I chuckled at her words, the image of me in a cape making me feel giddy. "And you're going to be my sidekick, right?" "Right," she agreed enthusiastically. "We can save the world together." That evening, as I tucked Melanie into bed, I felt a sense of peace settle in. "You know, Melanie," I said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "today was a big step for us. I'm proud of you for being brave." "Thanks, Mommy," she murmured, stifling a yawn. "I just want to help you like the judge helped us." "Your kindness is a superpower, you know," I said, kissing her forehead. "You remind me every day that we can get through anything together." As I closed the door to her room, I reflected on how much had changed since that day in court. The kindness shown by Judge Oliver had not only altered our immediate situation, but had opened a door to a brighter future. A few days later, I received a call from Linda at the community center. "Amanda, I wanted to share some exciting news. We have a workshop starting next week that focuses on resume building and interview skills. I think it could really benefit you." "Thank you so much for reaching out," I replied, feeling a surge of gratitude. "I would love to attend." "Great. I'll reserve a spot for you," Linda said cheerfully. "And remember, you're not alone in this. We're all here to support you." As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of belonging swell within me. With each passing day, I was beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Justice, in its truest form, was not just about penalties or fines. It was about compassion, understanding, and the support of a community. "Mommy," Melanie called from her room, pulling me from my thoughts. "Can we draw superheroes tomorrow?" "Absolutely," I replied, my heart soaring. "We can create the most amazing superhero stories together." And in that moment, I realized that we were already superheroes in our own right, armed with resilience, love, and the promise of a better tomorrow. Together, we would navigate this journey, hand in hand, one step at a time. The morning light streamed through the curtains, casting a warm glow across Melanie's room. I blinked away the remnants of sleep and took a deep breath, feeling the familiar flutter of anticipation in my chest. Today was the day I would begin my job training workshop at the community center, a stepping stone toward a new life for Melanie and me. "Mommy, is it time for our superhero adventure?" Melanie called out, her voice full of energy. "Almost my little hero," I replied with a smile, quickly getting out of bed. "But first, we need to power up with breakfast. How about pancakes?" "Yes, super pancakes," she shouted, leaping out of bed with a giggle. As I mixed the batter in the kitchen, Melanie bounced around, pretending to fly. "Look at me, Mommy," I'm a pancake superhero. I couldn't help but chuckle. Well, every superhero needs a good breakfast. Come help me flip them. After breakfast, we hurried to get ready. I put on a simple blouse and slacks, feeling both excited and nervous about what lay ahead. Mommy, you look like a superhero too, Melanie said as she twirled around in her bright, superhero-themed dress. Thank you. I'll do my best to save the day, I replied, ruffling her hair. We arrived at the community center, and I took a moment to soak in the atmosphere. The building buzzed with activity. Families were gathered, children were playing, and staff members were busy preparing for the day ahead. My heart raced, but I felt a sense of belonging here that I hadn't felt in a long time. As I walked into the workshop room, I was greeted by Linda, who was setting up chairs. Welcome, Amanda. I'm so glad to see you here. Are you ready to take this step? Yes, I am, I replied, my voice steadying as I took a seat. I want to make this work for Melanie. The room began to fill with other participants, each one sharing their own stories and struggles. It felt both overwhelming and comforting to be surrounded by others who understood the challenges of single parenting and finding stability. After a brief introduction, the facilitator, a friendly woman named Sarah, began the session. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to focus on building your resumes and preparing for interviews. Each of you has unique skills and experiences that can help you in your job search, and we're here to help you showcase those. As the workshop progressed, I found myself immersed in the activities. We worked on drafting resumes and practicing interview questions. I could feel the tension in my shoulders begin to ease as I focused on my goals. Remember, Sarah said, encouraging us during a mock interview session, it's important to highlight your strengths and how your experiences have shaped you. You are more than just your challenges. I practiced my responses, thinking of all the late nights I had spent working, balancing multiple jobs, and caring for Melanie. I've learned to be adaptable and resilient, I said during my turn. Those qualities have shaped who I am and what I can bring to a job. Great answer. Sarah smiled, jotting down notes. Those traits are invaluable in any workplace. At the end of the workshop, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. It was as if I had taken a leap forward, and the ground beneath me felt a little more stable. As I gathered my things, Melanie ran up to me, her eyes shining. Did you save the day, Mommy? I think I did, and you know what? I'm just getting started. I replied, enveloping her in a hug. We stepped outside, and Melanie grabbed my hand. Can we get ice cream now to celebrate your superhero training? I laughed, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over me. Absolutely. Let's treat ourselves. You've been my biggest supporter today. As we walked to the nearby ice cream shop, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come. Just a few weeks ago, I had felt trapped by my circumstances, but now I was filled with hope and determination. Later, as we sat at a small table, enjoying our ice cream, I turned to Melanie. You know, every superhero needs a sidekick. Are you ready to help me with this next chapter of our lives? Yes, I'll help you find a job and paint pictures for you to hang in your office. She exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. Deal, I said, savoring the sweetness of our ice cream and the sweetness of this moment. After our treat, we made our way home. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It felt like a beautiful backdrop for this new beginning we were embarking on together. That evening, as I tucked Melanie into bed, I could see the excitement still dancing in her eyes. Mommy, do you think we can have more adventures like today? She asked sleepily. Absolutely, my little hero. We have so many adventures ahead of us, I promised, kissing her goodnight. As I closed the door, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. I was finally taking control of my life, one step at a time. The future was still uncertain, but it was filled with possibilities. And with that thought in my heart, I knew that together we would rise to every challenge, and our journey was just beginning. The warmth of hope enveloped me as I prepared to face whatever came next, ready to embrace the new beginnings that awaited us both.